And he was the one with the felt sense that said, oh, sensations change. So even if you've been trapped by anxiety or distress inside your body, um, you can pay attention to the sensations and notice how they change inside of you. But there's a new study of neuroscience called interoceptive awareness. It's called interception, and it's our ability to observe body sensations in response to how we think, feel, and move. So the insula, which is in the mid part of our brain, in this picture you can see it's pointing to it in this part that's kind of right here, is like the superhighway of the brain. And the insula is the part of the brain that helps the body and mind communicate to one another. So for example, if it's hot outside and you are standing in the sunshine and it becomes too hot, your body is going to observe the heat and then take an action. So for example, you might move into the shade, or maybe you'd come inside if there's air conditioning, for example, and then your body would cool down. So this interceptive awareness is always trying to find ways to help us come to equilibrium or balance inside of our body. For example, if we have an itch, if we'll scratch it. So sensory awareness and observing the sensation cause an action. So what are researchers finding out? Well, guess what? When people have this body awareness and they can observe their body sensations, that this can help reduce impulsivity and promote emotion regulation and clearer thinking. So essentially that means you can just control your feelings better. You can stay in your resilience zone. And if you get bumped out, because you're sensing when you get bumped out, you know strategies to help you get back into your resilience zone. So one of the individuals who's been studying this is Dr. Martin Paulus at the University of California in San Diego. And we have the reference there if you want to look up more about this whole study of interception. So that's what tracking is all about. So, and you heard us say this last time for those, we might have some new listeners because we know that some new people came on. But when we learn to discern the difference between sensations of distress and well-being, we begin to have a choice of what to pay attention to. One of the most important things about learning in the community resiliency model. All right, Kelly, I'm turning the next one over to you. She's going to give us some strategies.
Thank you so much. Yeah, now we're going to begin to learn how to track and do a little experiment and practice ourselves. So as Elaine said, tracking is a great way to become in the present moment. So we want to track by noticing and paying attention to what's happening inside your body at the present moment. So we can do that by asking very simple questions, such as, what do you notice on the inside? And are the sensations pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And we want to sit with these sensations that are pleasant or neutral in order to expand and grow our resilient zone and widen our resilient zone. And then our bodies have such a natural wisdom. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous again. As Elaine always talks about, she has this saying that our bodies have such a natural wisdom. And with that natural wisdom, our bodies, when we return back into our resilient zone, we have a nervous system release, which can be part of, it is the natural biological response to our bodies releasing stress. So when we are returning back to our resilient zone, our bodies have this natural wisdom that releases that stress energy. And a way that that happens is through sensations such as trembling, tingling, yawning, stomach gurgling, burping, a warmth, a cooling down. And I don't know if you remember from last week, we were doing the Help Now strategies, and Elaine mentioned she was yawning, and that is a nervous system release. And that helps us to know that our body is becoming back into balance, and that it is the natural wisdom of our body that is helping to bring us back into that resilient zone and into a balance. And so when we pay attention to these sensations of release as well, that can help really our bodies become aware of becoming back into our resilient zone and to regulate even more. And one thing to note as we begin to practice tracking again, or even more, is that for some people, for many of us, this is a new language and a new experience to learn this, as Elaine said. And so for some people, even sensing pleasant or neutral sensations can spark unpleasant or even painful sensations. So again, we want to offer these as a choice, and knowing that the CRIM skills are a choice, and if you're sharing these with others, to know that it should be a choice for them to have that opportunity to, if they become distressed, then to stop practicing the skills.
And so just so we only have a short period of time to teach you some of the skills, but we also have known when we work with people and people have a problem in that way, that we can help them sense things outside of their body. Like, is the table hard or soft? Is the room with the temperature warm? Is it cool? And that can be a doorway or portal for them to have greater sensory awareness to be able to start to track if it's a bit difficult in the beginning.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so now we're gonna learn some of the sensation words, and the sensation words are kind of like the language of the body. And this helps us to name and describe sensations, which are the physical experiences in our body. And on this list, it's not an exhaustive list, but as you can see, there are things such as breathing, heart, muscles, and then there are words that can describe those sensations. So for breathing, you may describe your breathing as rapid, deep, shallow, light. Your heart may be fast, slow, rhythmic, fluttery, jittery. These are just some words to describe sensations. And one of the best ways that I like to track is with T. And this is a way that I'm able to help track my nervous system and notice what's happening on the inside, and then pay attention to sensations that are pleasant or neutral. So when I have my hands on the mug, I notice that it's warm. So I can describe it as being warm. I can feel my breath. I'm taking a deeper breath. That's very pleasant to me because I'm a little nervous. So this is helping me to bring awareness to sensations that are pleasant, which is a deeper breath. I can feel my stomach muscles loosening, and that's very pleasant.
I saw you take a deeper breath, Kelly. You just took a deeper breath. Did you notice that? Yeah.
Yes. So this is tracking it. To be honest, I use this a lot. T is a really great resource and help now and tracking skill for me, because when I get bumped out, I'm able to really sense into my body and sense that warmth and sense that deeper breath. And now that really just helps bring me back to the present moment and brings me back into my body and able to think clearly and begin that next step. So that's just one way that I like to track. And we have another activity that if you'd like to join us or join me for a tracking exercise. If you'd like to join me, you can bring your hands together like this and begin rubbing them really quickly. What do you notice? Are they warming up?
It's getting hot as I'm doing this, Kelly. Is that normal?
And then go ahead and stop.
Okay.
Now what do you notice?
It's cooling down.
Okay, do you notice any tingling?
I'm tingling, and I have a little sweat on my hands. That's funny because it didn't go that long, but yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah, so that's just a way to, again, kind of sense into your body and be able to name those sensation words: tingling, warmth, noticing the temperature. So that is a way for us to begin learning to track, and which really is a big part of it's the foundation of CRIM, is knowing how to track. And a great way to do that is by resourcing and paying attention to something that is pleasant. So Allison is going to
Can I
talk to
just ask one thing before that? I'm just wondering if people can put in the chat what they noticed when they were doing the exercise. Did they notice the heat, and when they stopped, if they want to just, I noticed that one person said they noticed tingling, which that is something that I've heard people say as well. So see if there's anything. Oh, heat and cold, warmth, and then tingling. Look at that. Similar to what I experienced, Kelly, and what you experienced. So this must be, yeah, thank you. So they noticed discomfort in their hands. Hands got hot. And that's an important thing too, is that oftentimes when we start paying attention to sensation, we sometimes can become aware of pain. That is a really good point that one person brought up. And it's very important that if you feel, if you feel something that's kind of wonky, or feeling pain, or I see that someone feels a little bit dizzy, see if you can, feel your body in the chair, or bring your attention to some place in the body that feels better. And that might help with the dizziness and might help with feeling discomfort. So what's important about the exercise is not that everybody has the same experience, but that you start noticing those sensations, like someone saying stiffness in the neck. So if you can bring your attention to some place inside, for example, that feels less stiff in your body, see if that helps the stiffness in the neck. Because again, what we pay attention to can grow.
Neurons that fire together wire together.
Yeah, I think we even have do we have another slide to that? Because boy, I love that saying. Did you hear that? Neurons that fire together wire together.
What we think about, we bring about. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to now say, so let's see. Yeah. Thank you so much, people that are adding things into the chat, because this is how we learn about this whole vocabulary of sensation. And just so that you know, in your activity booklet, there's the sensation list is on page 12. Okay, so Kelly, I think you're about to turn this over to Allison, who's going to teach us about resourcing, my favorite one. Okay, go ahead.
That's right. So as we mentioned, tracking is the most important skill, because we need that to be able to do the other skills. But it is often difficult for people when it's something brand new that we haven't really thought of, and we've lost touch with really noticing the small sensations that go on inside of us. And so the best way to first learn tracking is to identify a personal resource. And if you can identify resources and track sensations connected to those, then your resource develops and it helps with resiliency. So we're going to take a second to take a look at this picture, and we invite you to add in the chat what might be pleasant for the people in this photo. So food, friendship, laughter, companionship, sharing time with friends, being together, physical proximity. We notice that a lot more nowadays, don't we? Fellowship, having fun, connection, coffee, eye contact, the warmth of coffee, belonging. Awesome.
I love the meanings that people are putting in as they look at these people together. Carbs and coffee, the two C's that I personally love, carbs and coffee.
joy.
Sharing a meal, spending time together, community.
Someone just said something funny. I love that. So we've now placed a joke in here as well. And we get to decide what that joke is, right? Freedom, nice atmosphere. All right.
Very good. So it looks like we're already on it.
All right. So those were all resources, Allison, that people have been mentioning in the chat.
That's right. And so moving on to talk a little bit more about resourcing, Our resources can be any person, any place, thing, a memory, anything that makes you feel calm, pleasant, or peaceful. And they have a couple forms. It can be something external. It can be people, places, spiritual beliefs, skills and hobbies, even pets. And they can also be internal. It can be values or beliefs positive characteristics that we believe we have within ourselves. They can also be imagined. It might be a place that we've never experienced, but we can imagine it, where we would go and what it would be like to be in that spot. And one of the ones that I think about a lot is the beach. Right now, and especially for the last couple weeks, we haven't been able to go to the beach. And I will tell you, I moved to Wilmington, North Carolina because the beach was such a resource for me. I didn't grow up on the beach, but I live here now. And because of what's been going on, we've had our beaches closed and we couldn't go out there. But that's where I can go back and I can imagine when I was there and what things I sensed when I was there. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to see if Elaine or Kelly wanted to share one of their resources with everybody.
Oh my. Well, I made the slide presentation, and there's a
Ooh.
little girl in this picture, and that happens to be my granddaughter, Madison. So I realize that not everybody gets to put their picture of their favorite resource in their slides, but I got to do it. So that's my granddaughter. Makes me feel good just thinking about her. Just took a deep breath. How about you, Kelly?
Yeah, one of my resources is my niece. She's 8 months old, and I've been able to FaceTime with her, which brings me so much joy. And just talking about it, like smiling, she's definitely a resource for me. Just thinking about the possibility and just all of her new life and how beautiful that is. And yeah, just thinking about her, my chest feels a little warm and happy.
And one thing that's important that we know is that resources could be positive childhood experiences. And we know that people who've experienced lots of ACEs sometimes have trouble coming up with a resource or a positive experience. But people who've experienced no ACEs and don't have any positive childhood experiences are more likely to have depression than other people, and people who have had a lot of adverse childhood experiences and don't have positive childhood experiences to counterbalance. That's very difficult as well. So being able to give children positive childhood experiences during this time, the connection, the sharing a meal, the making a meal together, may be a resource for them at a future date, and maybe a resource for yourself as well.
And I think the other thing on top of that too is that, Carrie, is that for the adults that are listening, your childhood may have been very challenging, and maybe there aren't those kinds of resources you can call up from your childhood. And it still can sometimes be hard to call up resources because we can have a negativity focus. So it's really important that even if you can't think of one in your life right now, that's why the imagined one becomes so important. And I had a person that I talked to, and she said, well, I had a terrible childhood, but you know what? I used to watch television. This was a person who was like in their 70s, and there was a show called Father Knows Best. And she said, I used to imagine that he was my father. And that helped me get through a very difficult childhood. So I think there's things that we cultivate because of many of us have this natural ability to kind of focus on things that can help us. And so that is another thing I've seen from many people who've had challenging childhoods. Sometimes I can remember that one teacher who was kind to them, or that one person who sometimes made them think that maybe they were good enough. So I think that is one of the things that comes out in resourcing, that sometimes people are surprised that they have more resources than they thought. Well, I'm going to continue now. Gosh, Allison, look at all just asking us that question. You got a lot of things going here.
This is lovely. Yeah.
So It's important to talk about how to intensify our resources. So as we just mentioned, you may have to use imagined resources where you really have to think about it down to the details if it wasn't an experience that you had before. Um, and intensifying resources is used because we need to build new pathways in our brain. And we do that by asking questions about the resource. And it can take up to 14 seconds of attention to lay down a new, more resilient pathway. So when I think about my resource as the beach, and I ask myself some questions as to why is that such a resource for me, I could go on and on about that. But just to start out with is just the wind blowing off the shore, hear the sounds of the waves crashing, the smell of the salty air. And even though sometimes they can maybe be annoying, even the squawks of seagulls, because you're that close to the shore. And if I go deep, even further beyond what I'm sensing the sun on my face, sensing the sand between my toes, which some people may not like, but I enjoy. That's if I go beyond that, it does take me back to my childhood and to being so excited and looking forward to that week vacation that we would take to the beach every year. It also floods in memories of family members that I went with, and my grandfather in particular. We always had a week at the beach with him. And I can picture him right now sitting in his chair with his hat on, just looking out at the ocean. And I can feel my, as we described before, I can sense warmth coming up through my chest. And I can feel myself drifting off and looking away because I can picture those things, and it brings me joy. And so moving on to the next slide, it's important for us to develop many different resources, because what can happen sometimes is those pleasant memories I have can shift from being so pleasant right now in this moment to bringing some sadness to me because he's no longer with us. I no longer get to have that experience anymore. And so what I can do, I have a couple choices. I can acknowledge that, oh, it's, thinking about him is making me miss him. It's making me sad. And I can shift my awareness to another more pleasant memory. I can shift my awareness of sensations in my body. If I'm starting to feel sad and I'm noticing sensations that go along with that, I can shift to another part of my body that may feel a little bit better, may neutral, that's pleasant. But I also just may need to shift to another resource that I have. And I have recently just found a new one, watching Disney Plus. It's something that I don't have much time to do in our normal circumstances, but I watched a movie on Disney Plus the other night, and it just brought everything back, all these good memories. I also wanted to share, a lot of people use family members, use their children, their grandchildren, their nieces, and one of the first community resiliency model trainings that I attended, our trainer was talking about her daughter who was 2 or 3 years old. And she was like, that's my greatest resource. But it's so important to have other ones, because this morning she was throwing a tantrum on the floor and throwing her shoes across the house when we were trying to get ready to go to get to work and get to daycare. So in that moment, there was nothing that I could do to shift my focus for her to be a resource in that moment. So I used a different one, or she may have reached out and used a different skill. So we just want to really pay attention to how that's making us, what we're sensing in the moment, and having others available to us, that if for some reason we shift to something that isn't as pleasant, that we can we can use a different one. If you have the activity booklet and you were able to download that, there is an activity resources handout, a building resources handout, excuse me, in that handout on page 13. And thank you, Allison, for bringing that up for us. Developing resources, we kind of went through what that says at the top. It can be anything that helps you feel better. What or who uplifts you, what or who gives you courage or strength, what or who helps you get through hard times. So what we invite you to do is, if you have it with you, or if you have a notepad by, if you don't, you can always come back to this later. So if you don't have anything to write with right now, you can just think about that. But you want to think about, for now, just 3 resources. And if you can think about those or write those down, from there, you would circle one that you want to intensify a little bit more right now. And then write down details. Write down details about the resource that you circled. And 3 or more, because I could go on and on about details of the beach.
And here again, this is because we are shifting our focus from the negative to the positive, because as we think about these things, we are building the neurons. The neurons are firing together and wiring together so that we will have more of the positive experiences to pull from. And it's hope. Right now, I think people need hope, and these resources give them a sense of hope. They give me a sense of hope.
Well, it can do that, Carrie, but sometimes there's other things that it can do as well. So one of the things is that when you sense into your resource, you can ask yourself what thoughts you have. And there could be hope and a lot of other thoughts that come up that are very individual and unique to the person.
Exactly.
And so cultivating also that, to know, you notice that Allison's asking you to create your own. We don't suggest a resource. Yeah. We have the person think about what it is to them, because not everyone likes the beach. I know, Allison, you love it, but not everybody likes the beach.
Right.
So I've had many people say, my bed is my resource. I have the best pillow and the best blanket, and I can be away from the world. So we just want you all to know that you get to cultivate your own resources and your own thoughts about your resource.
And I think too that, there's a choice, just as Carrie mentioned, as what we pay attention to. And I could choose to focus on the fact that we're going through this pandemic and our beaches are closed and I can't go to the beach and I can't sit down and relax and feel the sun on me and breathe that air. And I can focus on that I can't do that and how bad it is. Or I can focus on the sensations that I remember from doing it before or imagining doing it. Or I could shift my resources to find something that I can do right now, which watching Disney Plus was a new thing for me. And that's something that I can do being stuck in my home.
And did you happen to watch a new movie that I suggested, Allison, that you watch? What did you think? What did you think of that movie?
We were sharing about which movies from Disney Plus were resources, and Elaine said, if you want to know about me, watch the movie Pollyanna. You must be too young since you haven't seen that. So I watched it, and it fits right in with this model. And what we pay attention to grows.
Yeah.
And for those of you who may have seen it, or those of you who haven't, I've already shared with several friends about the Glad game and about how Pollyanna went and really transformed this entire town, shifting their focus from more negative things to things that they were glad about and things that were positive. And it's so powerful right now, is we might not be able to get together in person and shift our whole towns, but we can start in our homes. We can start with our own thoughts and our own focuses, and spread that through our families and through our other contexts, which is the whole idea, and why this is called the community resiliency model, because it starts with one, and it just keeps spreading, and people keep sharing, and it's just beautiful.
And I think the other thing, I was just thinking about, why is it that I like that movie so much? Because I had a hard childhood. And that was something I was taken to by a family member that gave me another perspective about life. And I think that that's, that shifting that we're going to talk about as we go through the last skill, is that there is a choice. And I love the way you put it, Allison. I always get so touched up, everybody that's listening, because, Allison and Kelly are community resiliency model teachers. There's one thing for me to say what I say, because I had kind of the concept of it, but they are both such wonderful teachers. And that's our model in our organization, is that we train natural leaders of communities to bring these skills forward. And I couldn't be more proud of just what I'm hearing both of them say today. So I just had to add that, Allison, to anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you.
For sharing that.
I appreciate
But I know we wanted to ask people to share
So
in the chat.
we were talking a little there, and hopefully you had a chance to write down some resources and pick one, and maybe write down some details. The end of that is to notice, then, when you read through that one you've picked, you write down and read through or think about the details about that resource and why it's a resource, what you notice, if you notice any sensations. And we want to focus on those pleasant sensations. So we invite you to add, if you just want to add a resource that you have, you're welcome to do that. If you'd like to add a resource and maybe some sensations that you notice that gives you, we'd love to hear all of those.
The beauty of this is, as Allison said, is that if one person changes the situation, others can. And that's the beauty of this model as a community-based model, that people don't have to go to some, big conference to learn this. People don't have to pay a lot of money to learn this. This is readily available as our nation faces a mental health crisis unlike any we've ever faced before. To be able to get these tools into the hands of parents and children and teachers and ministers and imams and rabbis and everybody is so critically important, because we are dysregulated when we're caught up in the drama and the trauma of the moment. And just as trauma is contagious, being regulated is contagious.
I just love hearing what I'm hearing and seeing in the chat. People are sharing such wonderful variety of different resources. Looking into my children's eyes when they were born, the look of curiosity and like they were trying to focus on me. I created an imaginary place during childhood that I used to go to during meditation, a forest and a waterfall. Memories of a pet horse. Oh, dandelions. This is why, it always kind of makes, I kind of like tears in my eyes right now, because I just love to see the full breadth of all these little things and larger things in life that are resourceful to us.
Maybe that's why cooking bread right now is such a popular thing, because it involves so many of the senses.
Yeah. Pussy willows. You just reminded me of a childhood memory, Judith Carter. We used to go by the creek and we used to pick pussy willows and take them home and put them in water.
How sweet. Your mom's on this call, Kelly. And you are her resource. What is it? That is not a surprise. That is so dear.
So Allison, I'm just noticing, I'm taking deep breaths seeing all these people's resources. So does that happen when we start hearing about other people's resources? Is that a common thing?
Well, I can only speak from my experiences, and I can tell you when you and Kelly shared your resources, I could feel that warmth growing inside of me. And yes, reading through these, it's so lovely to see all of these. And I think you might be talking about those. We've talked about mirror neurons a
I
little
think
bit.
so, yeah. I have to share just one story. And that I was in Rome in October, and we were doing this exercise, and this one young woman raised her hand and she said, I didn't really think about this, but these are important things to do when you live in chaos. And she shared that she had grown up in Sri Lanka during the Civil War, and that her grandma used to bring her and her cousins into a certain part of the house when the bombs were they could hear them right outside their door, and she used to encourage them to make skits about their resources. And she said and so when I think about that time, she said, I don't think about the bombs. I think about my grandmother, and I think about my siblings and how we were together, and my cousins, and how we were in the midst of chaos, still being able to kind of have, my grandmother had this way of reminding us of our humanity. And I think that's something that we can all think of now as we're faced with this pandemic and the different ways that people feel about it, that we can remember that this wonderful young woman's story, that there can be chaos, but that doesn't mean that we can't cultivate the other things that are true about our lives. So I know that we need to take a bio break, Allison. So what would you like to say as you're closing up our little discussion about resourcing?
I did see a comment briefly. It's kind of hard to keep up with all of them, and I love
No,
that
it's so
they're coming in
wonderful.
so quickly.
I want to see them
Um,
afterwards. We get to look at them.
yes, but I thought I saw one go by that someone mentioned that they weren't sure what their resource was.
Yes.
And I think it's important um, to know that that's okay. And just, maybe if you notice, take some more time to think about it. If you don't have it right on spot, you maybe hopefully saw some of those other resources or examples of other people's in the chat that maybe have sparked some ideas. But just know that, it will come to you. And if you focus on something that brings you sensations of well-being and brings you joy and uplifts you, I think that you'll find them. They can be the smallest things that you might not think about right now. Sitting here thinking, oh, I have to think of this huge thing. What could I say it is for me? Like, it could be just walking out the front door and taking a big breath of fresh air from the outside that you just
It can be
think about.
imagined. So I'm going to just take us to that 5-minute break, and to just do a quick bio break. We have about 30 minutes left. So we need to do that right now. 5-minute bio break.
See, someone said a cup of tea. Me too.
Okay. I'm thinking that this webinar may end up being a resource for me because it's been so dear.
I want us to be able to cover the other skills. So I'm really excited about that. So I think we'll take a little shorter dab into the neuroscience part, because I would really love for them to get the skills.
Sounds good.
I'm going to take that bio break myself. Be right back. Oops.
So where are we in the slides, ladies? Are we trying to track in on that? We're doing well on time. Yeah.
right. You ready to go again?
Mm.
All right, Carrie,
Right, good.
you want to
Ready?
talk a little bit about this?
I would love to. Thank you. Um, let's see, let me kind of clear some things off my screen. And oops, it went away. Hold on, I cleared too much off my screen. So we talk about how important uh, the ACEs study is because in the 5 parts of ACEs science, and Elaine has given us a little background about the ACEs study that it came out in 1998, and it showed the direct correlation between the number of adverse childhood experiences a person has and the likelihood of their developing disease later in life. With 4 ACEs, one is 1,200% more likely to attempt suicide. With 6 ACEs, one is many of the people who have 6 ACEs are likely to live a life that is 20 years shorter than people without ACEs. But the 5 parts of ACEs science, we cover the epidemiology of ACEs, meaning the effect of adverse childhood experiences on our genes. People who have experienced historic trauma, racism, whose ancestors did as well. Is stress lives in the body. As Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. The bodies keep the score. Generations of bodies keep the score. The impact on the brain, the fact that toxic stress caused by ACEs will affect the structure and function of the developing brain. And this is why it is so critical to keep safe babies in utero, and especially children the first years of their lives, because that is when their brains are literally exploding, and the toxic chemicals that are caused by toxic stress do change the function and the structure of the developing brain, and not for the better, of course. The impact on the body, our bodies store the stress. People who have 3 or more ACEs are more likely to have twice as likely to have heart attacks and cancer. The likelihood of people, trauma being translated into addictive diseases, issues with relationships, with inability to hold a job, with financial issues, the failure of marriages. It is just, the body keeps this, and it keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And I confused epidemiology with epigenetics, pardon me, but the epidemiology is keeping all of the study of ACEs and the expanded definition of ACEs, meaning that it started out with the original 10 and has expanded much further from beyond physical abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, sexual abuse, losing a parent to death or divorce, living in a home where there is addiction, living in a home where there is mental illness, living in a home where there is someone who is in jail or witnessing domestic violence. So we have expanded that greatly to include racism, poverty, violence outside the home. And then the resilience. The great news is that we know that the body can heal, the brain is plastic, that, as we have said many times during this, neurons that fire together wire together. We don't have to we can change that negativity bias that we have in our brains, that things are always going to be bad, things are always going to be sad. The more we focus, as Pollyanna did, on what's beautiful and what's good and what brings us joy and how we can share that, the more regulated we are going to be in our central nervous systems, and the more likely we are to be able to take that regulation out. So I hope that was a good, quick overview.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Carrie. You know, we're going to talk just a little bit about the brain, and that we do have an organizing principles in the community resiliency model. But the reason why I want to highlight this right now is that many of us can find that we're operating a lot out of our survival brain. This is kind of instinctual. It carries out the fight, flight, and freeze response. It's unconscious. It's like right now you're digesting your food that you may have eaten earlier this morning, but you're not thinking about it because your body just does it. But there's that's your survival brain. And if you were to look at this little picture of the brain, if you put up our hands, this part of your hand would be the survival brain. So if you put your thumb in the middle, this is your limbic area, the blue thing, the blue area of the slide. And then if you bring your hands over, this is the cortex or your thinking brain. But when we get distressed, there's a part of the limbic area called the amygdala, which is our appraisal system. And right now, because the virus is an invisible threat for many of us, that we can have this amygdala going, whoa. So then we flip our lid and we start operating out of our survival brain. And when we do that, we're hypersensitive. We're looking around, seeing if there's a threat. We're watching people who are coming to our door. We may also find that we have more of that negativity focus that Carrie's talking about. So it's really important for all of us to know that when that amygdala sounds the alarm and our survival brain takes over, we don't think as clearly. And I've talked to so many people during this pandemic that are saying, I'm just fuzzy. I feel like there's a fuzzy film. And that's often a clue for me that that's exactly what's happening to this person. And that's one of the reasons why, because this is our brain and our brain is connected to our body, that we can pay attention to our sensations. That is the language of the amygdala, because the amygdala is going to keep firing, thinking we're in danger, unless we try to intersect the hijacking of the nervous system to bring us back into our resilient zone. And that's why we talk a little bit more about the amygdala, because it generalizes information. So if it has the amygdala is organized due to our lived experience, and that's lived experience of highly charged emotional experiences, whether it is traumatic or whether it's the most positive thing. And when it starts appraising the system, let's say I'm listening to a song. I'm hearing it right now, actually, of the song that I fell in love with my husband. And I'm feeling this like flood of like being 17, which is when I met him. Now, I haven't been 17 for a long time. And yet my body is reacting as if it was that first time, because this is a memory that's stored that was highly emotional. But what's so interesting about the amygdala as well, it generalizes information, especially the ones that threaten us. So for example, if I was bitten by a snake that was black and I walk into my room that I'm in right now and there's a black cord on the floor, and it's novel for me to see a black cord on the floor, I might jump and then I'm going, oh, wait a second, it's just a black cord. And that's, why would I do that? It happens automatically, unconsciously, because this is the way that we're designed. And this is an important part of being a human being, because we may not understand why we have a certain reaction, because we're not necessarily going, oh, did anybody teach us about the amygdala? I didn't learn about the amygdala until I was in my 50s. So most of us don't get this information. And fortunately, a lot of us are learning it, even children. And children love learning about their brain, and that they have this part of their brain that sounds an alarm when it's in danger. And also when it creates memories that are positive for us. And this is kind of like my attempt at humor regarding the amygdala. Amy G. Dalla, she's got a suitcase of memories. A lot of good things in here, really nice scarves, but there's that fire alarm there too that sounds the alarm when we're in danger. And that brings us to this next area that I wanted to touch upon before we get to the rest of our skills, which we want to focus on for the rest of the time we have together. And that we have different ways that memory is encoded in our brain. So we have explicit memory, that's factual memory. It's called up by intention. Oh, you asked me, oh, what did you do when you were 11, Elaine? I went to El Salvador for the first time and visited my mother's family. Now that was a very big event. I don't remember anything else about being 11, but I remember that factual memory that I just called up with intention. When we have explicit memory, it has a sense of ourself in time. It's like our autobiographical history. And it develops between 18 to 24 months of age. But explicit memory also is very prone to decay, especially if we've had traumatic experiences, that we may not recall things in exactly the way they happened. But that's explicit memory, factual memory. Maybe you'll remember something about what Allison said tomorrow, and that would be your factual memory. But implicit memory is what this model is all about, because it is about the body memories. And we also have body memories connected to traumatic experiences. It doesn't have a sense of self or time. So like if there is an Iraq veteran and all of a sudden he hears a helicopter, he might dive underneath a table. Why did I do that? I'm now back home in North Carolina. Why did I dive underneath the table? Because that was a memory cue that caused a reaction in the body that was automatic, because there was a time in Iraq that he was under threat when the amygdala heard the helicopter and now encodes that memory. But it's really important that when we have traumatic experiences is that we may not have any explicit memory or just fragments of memories, but we have the multisensory experience that's encoded within our brain and of course then in our bodies as well. So this can be happening to us now when we feel that hypervigilance about, oh, I have a cough. And now a cough is now connected to danger. And now we think we have the virus, but it could be anything. So this is showing you a memory capsule of implicit memory that's like my memory was like my fire, in case anybody wanted to know what the song was. That's how old it was. But it's from the sound, but it can be a smell. It can be chocolate chip cookies. It can be anything that provides us with a positive memory. But then there's this other. And these are the internal and external reminders that remind us of something that wasn't pleasant. And the reason why I'm bringing this up now, I've heard from a lot of people who have been sheltering in space, that sheltering in space had reminded them of childhood memories. And all of a sudden they connected the dots and said, oh, I was trapped in my house when I was a kid. And I had a really abusive stepfather and I couldn't leave. And being in the house now, caused the same reactions in me. And I was going, but wait a second, I've been feeling pretty good. Why am I feeling that way? Why am I sensing myself in that way? It was because of the amygdala sounding an alarm and generalizing information from the past to the present. So, we could go on and on about this, but we don't have time, but I wanted to at least touch upon it, of the importance of this information. And that's why the skills we're learning is intercepting, I can't say it, the hijacking of our nervous system when we can get bumped out when we're not in danger. Because sometimes the amygdala doesn't know the difference between a match and a forest fire. So what we're trying to do with the skills is helping the nervous system come back into balance. And grounding is such an important skill. And who's teaching grounding?
I am. I'm excited.
Kelly, go for it.
Wonderful. This is a skill that I use a lot, and as Elaine said, it can really help bring that sense of safety, as she mentioned, with the amygdala when it's alarming, and this really helps to bring a sense of safety, gravitational security and safety with something that provides support in the present moment. So grounding can help bring us back into the present moment. Sometimes when we're anxious, like as Elaine said, with the virus and the current situation, that can cause a lot of anxiety. And when we ground, we literally bring our awareness to the present moment by noticing a part of our body or our body making contact with the supportive surface. When we're more grounded and our body has that felt sense of safety connected to the earth, that allows us to develop deeper relationships and have that deeper connection with ourselves and others in the earth. So this can be a great way to help bring that sense of safety to our bodies, that felt sense. You can ground in many different ways. You can ground by sitting, standing, lying down. You can ground even through your hand. I do that a lot, especially in meetings. Put my hand on the table or the chair and just feel that sense. It automatically brings that sense of security to my body, that sense of safety to my body and brain. And it is a way that, again, we can bring our awareness back into the present moment. And so one way to know that we do teach resourcing before, so that to know that during grounding, if a sensation of distress comes up, you can access that resource, that sensation of well-being through a resource as well. And I'd love to walk you through a grounding exercise right now, if you'd like. I invite you, if you'd like to join me, you can find a comfortable position. You can ground by sitting, standing, lying down, or simply finding any position that feels comfortable for you. And as you find a comfortable position, notice how you are being supported by the chair, bed, floor, wall, or ground. And as you bring your attention to the places of support, notice your breathing, heart rate, muscle relaxation. Notice especially any places that feel more relaxed or pleasant or neutral. Next, bring attention to your back, lower body, thighs, legs. And if you are sitting or standing, notice how your feet are resting on the floor or how they're making contact with the ground. Bring your attention to the sensations that are calming or neutral within your body. Take your time. And as you bring your attention to neutral or pleasant sensations, notice your breathing, heart rate, muscle relaxation. And if you become aware of an uncomfortable or even painful sensation, shift your attention to places that feel better, more comfortable, or neutral, and notice the change. As a way to bring your practice of grounding to a close, slowly scan your body from head to toe, bringing attention to all the places inside that have changed in a more pleasant or neutral way since you started. Take your time. And when you are ready, bring your awareness back to the room or space where you are. If you need more time, take all the time that you need. So that was just a brief grounding exercise, and that is available in the activity booklet as well as on the iChill app, and Elaine's beautiful soothing voice is on the iChill app, which is free and available for you to download. So that skill is on the app. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Kelly. That was wonderful. I'm so relaxed right now. I'm just going to fall asleep. So we're going to invite people too to see what their reactions are in the chat. Well, and so for the sake of time, we really want to hear what your reactions are, and I'll try to respond to them. But Allison is going to briefly talk about one gesturing skill that we have, which is just the self-calming. There's many parts of gesturing, but she's going to highlight just one right now that we want you to know that you might want to add to your toolbox. There you go, Allison.
Thank you. So gestures emerge spontaneously and are usually happen below our conscious awareness. It's, the use of motions of limbs of the body. We've had several. I know people talk with their hands. I've done it a couple of times. Elaine, when she was mentioning her granddaughter, her hands went over her heart. They're movements or gestures that do not cause self-injury or self-harm. They can even be when you're feeling nervous, maybe you see somebody shaking their leg. But they have found these that, you know, individuals all over the world, regardless of their culture, make gestures when we speak about healing experiences in our lives. And we want to focus really today on inherently self-soothing gestures, self-calming gestures, maybe putting your hands over your heart and taking a deep breath, or sitting back and relaxing. I know people have rings or bracelets that sometimes they might run through their fingertips as a way to self-regulate. And
Also, Ellen, the gestures really can be anything, because even though we have this person putting their hand to their heart, it may not be self-soothing for everyone right at this moment. So people can choose to do whichever one that they'd like to. Right. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're fine. We become aware of these things that are connected to our well-being. So that goes, you know, just along with what you just said, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. I wanted to share briefly, because we only have a few minutes left, but I went to college with a guy who we were in the education, a lot of education classes together, and we were working on a project together, and all of a sudden he pulled out this little piece of, looked like to be like putty, and he pulled it out of his pocket, and he shared with me that he keeps it in his pocket, and he squeezes it and shapes it between his fingers when he is feeling uncomfortable and he feels like he needs to regulate himself. And that he has had that, or used the idea, from his first grade teacher. And so I really just wanted to share that, with the importance of, you know, an adult in his life sharing that skill with him when he was in first grade, that he was still using as an adult in college. Is that something that worked to help him regulate his nervous system? And so that's why it's so important for us to first learn what can help us calm. First, learn the skills ourselves, and then we can share it with others and teach it to children, and what a lasting effect it can have on people as they learn these, and children as they learn these skills. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Elaine?
I just think it would be nice if people just thought for just a couple seconds about a self-soothing gesture, and share with us in this chat what that might be. Like, I rub my thumb on top of my other thumb, and I do that, and it just calms me. Or hearing, I twist my rings, I tap. One of my daughters shakes her legs to calm, and that's a very common one. And when I see someone shaking their legs, I never tell them to stop. I just ask them to notice what it's like. And oftentimes could shake, and then it will calm down, because we need to always have ways that we release these energies in our bodies when they build up. So we have a child's pose, twist my hair. A lot of people do this. So sometimes the things that we've been chastised by parents or teachers are the things that are calming us, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I went to Catholic school that the nuns said, "Stop touching your hair." And that was like making me calm down, right? So we're hoping we're adding to that repertoire. Well, I'm going to go through this next because we want to get to the last skill. We only have a few minutes left. And the other one you can look at in the slides, it's just our definitions of trauma and stress, toxic stress. But we want to get to shift and stay, because shift and stay really it's the final skill. We've taught you all 6 today, 1 from the first day and 5 from today, but it's identifying your sensations of distress, and why that tracking exercise in the beginning was so important. Because when you have distress right now, and if you sense it in your body, you may not even connect yet in your thinking brain what's happening. But if you notice that distress, you have options. You can turn to a resource. You can turn to grounding. You could turn to one of the help now strategies. And calming gestures, I'm saying, someone twisting my wedding ring, bouncing my toes, rubbing my thigh. You can shift your attention to a self-soothing gesture. or to a pleasant or neutral sensation on the inside. You have so many choices. And then to notice how your nervous system comes back into balance. And to know that for many of us, it takes a little bit of time to create that new neuronal pathway, that new cellular pathway, so that it expands and grows. Like Carrie, we've all said, I think today, 3 of us have, what wires together, what fires together, wires together. So the more that you do that, you'll see that your resilient zone can widen. I believe that's what Allison said the first day, that it can widen, or was it Kelly? Well, one of you said it. But maybe we all said it, but you can widen that resilient zone. And this is a slide that I put together as a result of COVID, right? But it could be for anything. How am I focusing my attention during the pandemic? Are you having negative thoughts? Am I over consuming the news or media? Am I disconnecting from others? Trouble sleeping? So moving into the resilient zone, if I identify my resources and track, or if I ground, or if I pay attention to sensations of well-being, I can maybe get into my resilient zone. And you know what happens then is our thinking changes. And we tend to have more collaborative thinking, compassionate thinking. I'm empathic to the current concerns of others. I practice my skills of well-being. I'm grateful. So this is a decision we all have to make of how we're going to be with this, this terrible thing that we've all been facing, and we don't know where it's going to end. And then finally, we have research about the model. We have a research project that's been done in Sierra Leone after the Ebola virus. I just talked to the authors, and they're sending it for publication tomorrow. I've been putting a little bit of fire underneath them to get it done, because it really showed that there were statistically significant improvements in resiliency and reductions in trauma symptoms, secondary traumatic stress, depression, and anxiety. And so I want you all to know that this has been used with another pandemic. It's very important research. And that Lindy Grabby from Emory has done research that there was an 80% improvement in well-being after a year, just after a 3-hour training, just like all of you would have had. So the Sierra Leone research too, you can go to our website, and the research at Trauma Resource Institute is elaborated upon. And of course, as soon as it gets published, you'll be sure to know that we're going to put it on to our, it will be posted onto our website. The Lindy Grabby article, I believe, is there, as well as another article that I didn't put in that was about this model being used with addictions. But I thought it was interesting is that when Lindy and I were talking, what were the nurses doing? Well, what they were doing is they were using their skills during the activities of daily living. They were using it, they were more mindful of their body. They were using it in the midst of chaos. They were using it when they were getting upset, during codes, when people were dying. So these are the kinds of things that are very important for us all to know, that we've been talking about some skills, but we do have an evidence base that's growing about this model. And this was I did put it in. This is the one about addiction. And remember, you're going to be getting the slide set so you can see the journal articles and look them up. And to remember, everything that we've been talking about is on the iChill app. So if you said, I wish they would have spent more time, you can spend more time with yourself in listening to the skills and learning about them. And finally, this is our Trauma Resource Institute. Our vision is to create not only trauma-informed individuals and communities, but resiliency-informed. We have such synergy and synchronicity with ACE's connection. But our mission and what we've seen around the world, which has been so gratifying to us, even in this horrible time, is we have a commitment to bring these wellness skills based on cutting-edge neuroscience to our world community. And each one of you now are the one person at a time. I feel we have some new members of our community for you all taking the time to listen and being with the 4 of us as we have done this. You can get in contact with us we tweet and we Instagram and we Facebook. I don't do them, but there's people on our staff that do it. I do Facebook every now and then. And then we have ways that you can connect with me through the hello@communitytry.com to learn more about our training programs. But if you want to talk to Kelly or to Allison, and you already know how to get in touch with ACE's connection. And then I have really some exciting news from the United Nations. partnered with Taylor and Francis Rutledge, who they are the ones who um, oh, I can't think of the name. They printed my book. They took my book and they created my book. Thank you so much, Rutledge. But anyway, there's an online curated learning library in order to meet the sustainability goals that are enunciated by the United Nations to end poverty, fight inequality and injustice, and protect the planet. And my book was chosen as one of the vehicles to get there. We were very proud of this. This happened last July. And this is a few places we've been in the world. That's not just me. We have partners around the world. So it's 102 countries so far, which I can't believe. And then finally, a couple of words of wisdom. And I always loved Maya Angelou. She was so inspiring. But it is time for parents to teach young people that in diversity, there's beauty and there is strength. And I think that our model is about all of humanity. It's about every single one of us around the world. We all have a nervous system that operates the same. And that's regardless of our skin color, our faith, where we've grown up, our age, whether we're young, whether we're little ones, teenagers, whether we're adults or seniors. So when we bring awareness to the inner wisdom of our bodies, well-being can grow even in times of great suffering. So moments of gratitude can be seen and sensed. So I think that's it, ladies. We have one more thing. I just remember we added this because we have been hearing that people have been suffering and people have been, that may need the hotline that I'm trying to go to right now, which is our national lifeline for suicide prevention. And just to know that you can call it or chat it, it's a number that we all should know right now. And we just want to say in ending, thank you all for being with us. We're seeing such nice complimentary things in the chat. And to just let us know if you would like to have more from us, that we certainly can repeat these kinds of webinars. And we do have ones that are directed towards, in our nonprofit, towards healthcare workers. We actually have session 2 tomorrow for 3 hours that Lindy Grabby and I are doing together that you can still link into. And it's a sliding fee scale from $0 to I think $100. And if you can only pay $0, that's fine. And we also have one in Spanish, although I think that might finish this morning. But we're trying to also offer it in different languages so that we can reach as many people as possible. So thank you, everyone. And I want to turn it over to Kelly and Allison and Carrie to also say their parting words.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you all for being here and being willing to learn this incredible model and these skills that have been so life-changing in my life. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to be able to share it. So thank you so much.
And I will ditto all of that, and just am so happy for the opportunity and happy that, you guys can now take some of these skills for your own use to then share with others, because that's what this is about, is helping us become a more regulated world. So be well, everybody.
Thank you all. And again, Elaine, thank you for always saying yes, for your generosity to the world in sharing this. It's amazing how many people whose lives you've touched, and little wonder that the Dalai Lama, that you got to share space with the Dalai Lama.
I did. Well, that was quite a thing. But it's what I've learned too is that sharing space with all of you. We're all on this planet, I believe, for a reason, and to try to show up as our best selves and to be the best that we can. We don't always succeed. I certainly get into my high zone every now and then, and I never like it when I get there. I'm better at getting back into my resilient zone. So remember, as much as I've practiced this, it doesn't mean that I don't get bumped out. So just remember and be compassionate towards yourself right now. If you find that, your goal was, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, but maybe you haven't done that. It's a different time these days. So be kind to yourself.
Indeed, indeed. And again, thank you all so much. This is a time that we can actually prevent some adverse childhood experiences if and when we practice these wonderful tools and skills that we've learned here today. So this video will be posted on the ACES Connection YouTube channel. If you would like to join the ACES Connection YouTube channel, just go and search ACES Connection and sign up, and you'll receive notification as to when it's been posted. And the first part of this webinar series is also there as well. So as Allison Wine so beautifully put it, peace and be well. And thank you all. Thank you again, Elaine.
You're welcome.